Well, we are in the manufacturing heartland of Victoria. This is Q&A Live. We're interactive in Dandenong, Melbourne. Our next question is from Roger Young.
I run a small manufacturing business. We manufacture specialised fasteners, and we've done so for 70 years now. Over the last 2 years or so, the Australian dollar has appreciated from a long-term average of around 75 cents to up around $1.05 now. That means that products that we got $105 for instance, we would now be getting $75 for. And I don't see that as being a sustainable situation for manufacturing industry. And indeed for tourism or education or agriculture, which is affected by this currency problem in the same way. So my question to the panel is, do they see this horrendous problem as being a cyclical problem, or which may rectify itself in a relatively short time, or perhaps it's a structural problem that we'll be stuck with for a very long time? And would the panel have perhaps a view on how this problem might be addressed?
Sophie Mirabella, and you might like to tell us how you'd deal with keeping manufacturing industries that are suffering like this, 30% effectively depreciation in what they're getting for their the things they export.
Look, there's no silver bullet, but the first and simplest thing you would do is make sure you reduce government debt. The government borrowing $100 million a day is putting pressure on the dollar, is putting pressure on interest rates, and that is something the government can do. The second thing you would do is immediately announce that you would not introduce the carbon tax or abolish the carbon tax. I've been to Dandenong, I don't know how many times in my capacity as Shadow Minister, and what the carbon tax has done is make a very challenging situation very difficult. It's removed a lot of confidence from businesses to invest in the machinery, to take advantage of the high dollar, bring in cheap machinery.
Can we just make the point that
yeah.
there is no carbon tax yet?
No,
so
but
all of these things, all of these things that you're talking about. No, I'm just making the point. All of these things that you're talking about have happened without a carbon tax.
That's the exact point, Tony. Yeah. These things have happened without a carbon tax. The spectre of a carbon tax is not helping people to make the decision to invest machinery into the future. Jude, come with me next time I visit some manufacturers in Mark's electorate that he has to traverse 3 other electorates to get to. He gets very upset when I visit them because they tell me the truth. They tell me the challenges they're facing, and the one thing they can't deal with is additional costs that will come from a carbon tax. You're not going to make an investment decision today to buy a $5 million piece of equipment when you know that you're going to be in a less competitive position after the 1st of July, because you'll be competing with imports and exports perhaps that don't have the additional costs of a carbon tax imposed.
But beyond getting rid of the carbon tax, because everything that happened to that gentleman happened prior to any carbon tax, what would you do to solve that problem for manufacturing?
Well, the first thing is
how would you get the dollar to come down, just to start with?
Well, we don't believe in controlling the dollar, neither does the Labor Party, but we would make sure that we're not a wasteful government borrowing $100 million a day, putting pressure on the dollar and on interest rates. That's a very definite thing that we would not do. We have announced policies to make sure we get a better anti-dumping policy, not something that takes 2 years and $500,000, to make sure that Australian industries are operating on a level playing field. We were criticised about it, about that policy from the Labor Party, because they didn't do the hard work and go that extra mile. We did. We got a world-class policy that's akin to the US and to Europe, because politics should be the art of the possible. Where there is a problem, you should look at trying to fix it. And one area we are looking at is the burden of regulation. You would know yourself how your costs have increased with regulation. And we've already announced, Tony Abbott's already announced a one-stop shop based on the state government model.
I appreciate that, but I'm just going to go back to our questioner. Listening to, first of all, listening to what Sophie Mirabella is saying, do you feel that your concerns are going to be addressed appropriately?
Well, I think perhaps labour laws need to be looked at, and I don't think we're talking about lower the level of wages at all, as Kearney referred to before. It's becoming more flexible. Peter Ruth was talking about taking off payroll tax, for instance, which appears to be an inequitable tax on employment. The problems that we face as small manufacturers, we do a little export. We've actually invested a lot of money in the potential of export, which is a little difficult now because of this change in the currency. But it's also import competing aspect that's it's not just exporters that are affected by this, it's all of those industries I mentioned that may have all of their activities domestically, but they're being impinged upon by cheap imports. I see it as a difficult problem. I have no solutions other than labour laws. Freeing up of some of the labour laws would be a very good thing.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Well,